Hola.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're safe.
Hello, welcome.
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 Welcome. Welcome.
Hi, PRISM students. We miss you and we're very excited to hear about your research projects.
Hi, how are you? This is Dr. Chen. I miss you. During this busy time, you're doing a fantastic job. I'm so proud of you.
Hi, everyone. We miss you a lot.
Hey, everyone. We miss you.
Don't be nervous. Good luck on your presentations.
Wish you and your family peace and tranquility during these difficult times. Much love.
So I'd like to share with you a quote that's helped inspire me on those days when I'm feeling down. It's from the Winnie the Pooh series, and it's something that Christopher Robin tells Winnie. Christopher says, "You're braver than you believe, you're stronger than you seem, and you're smarter than you think."
Hey.
Hi, everyone. Before we get started, the PRISM team and I wanted to tell you how proud we are of all the work that you have done to help us put together this symposium. And to tell you that we miss you and that we cannot wait to see you again when things get back to normal. And although we cannot be in the same place right now together at John Jay's dining hall, sharing a delicious meal provided by MBJ, we want to remind you that we're all in this
Together.
And now, allow me to introduce John Jay's Dean of Research and the Director of the Program for Research Initiatives in Science and Math, Dr. Anthony Karpi.
Thank you, guys. Welcome back. Those presentations were awesome. I sat in on the toxicology and environmental section and just loved to see all that was going on. You guys have done so much hard work, and I really thank you all for all that you've done in putting these together. It's clearly showed off all the work you've been doing over the past year and over the past month. I was really impressed at how professional everyone was, and I'm so proud of everyone. We have a special treat today as both the college president and provost have joined us for this plenary session. As you can imagine, it's been a crazy time for them as they try to steer the ship that is John Jay through these crazy times. So I very much appreciate them taking the time to join us. And it is with great pleasure that I introduce John Jay College's president, Karol Mason, who will bring greetings from them both. Karol?
Good evening, because it is evening now. I want to join Anthony and Dean Karpi, I should say, in congratulating all of you all. I got to hear several of the presentations today, and I was so excited about them. I forgot that I had to log off to say hello for this event. So I want to thank you all for joining us for our first virtual e-Symposium for the PRISM Undergraduate Research Program. And, you know, as I mentioned, I'd like to thank Dr. Karpi and Edgardo for putting this event together. And I know they didn't put it together alone. The whole team that you saw in the intro helped produce this wonderful new way to celebrate the research that you all are doing. And I think that we need to borrow some of this and use it going forward, because it is really creative way to do it. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome back to Dr. Orta. She asked me to call her Olivia, but for all of you who are watching, I want you to hear her as Dr. Orta, because she was you at one point, but she's Dr. Orta now. So you honor us with your presence, your achievements, and your unfailing commitment to scientific discoveries that uplift our societies and uplift the John Jay community, just seeing what you're doing and watching the trajectory of your life. I know that these are challenging times that we're all going through right now. But at John Jay, we are resilient, and we are thriving in spite of the environment we're going through. And I know that our PRISM students, the faculty and staff, have taken this challenge with a laser focus, using your scientific commitment to bring to everything that you do, because you're dedicated scientists, so you're looking at this from the eye of a scientist. While you're juggling work obligations and family commitments, you're continuing to do your research projects, as we've seen today from the wonderful research work you've been demonstrating today. And our PRISM faculty, I mean, you guys, and guys, this is a generic term to me, win the prize for quickly pivoting to a distance learning environment, and how you've supported our students in every way that we could think of using technology. You've been calling them, video conferencing, mentoring them online, and giving them advice on papers and presentations, and how they've managed to scale those presentations down to 5 minutes using the slides has just been a joy to watch. So I know that as PRISM folks and scientists, because that's what you're all scientists, as you proved today, you understand the importance of science, and I'm going to stay neutral on that issue but looking at the COVID-19 pandemic through the lens of a researcher, we need you. We need science. We need science to help guide us to find a vaccine for this deadly disease, and to figure out how we can return and use the data that you guys, scientists, produce to figure out how do we go back to work, how do we go back to school. So today we are thrilled to have Dr. Orta join us because she exemplifies the power of a strong work ethic, the necessity of dedicated mentors, one of whom is on with us, family members, and the importance of an unshakable commitment to scientific advancement, and an unshakable belief in what you can be and what you can do, and letting those who around you support you in achieving that goal. So she graduated from John Jay in 2007, magna cum laude. And her mentor, I believe, is on the screen right now, or maybe you can't see him, but I can, Dr. Anthony Karpy. And their relationship demonstrates what we hope that you all will always do, and that's stay in touch with your faculty members, stay in touch with the people, the staff members at PRISM, stay in touch with the people who are dedicated to your success and want to enjoy your success. So after Dr. Orta left John Jay, she got her master's degree in public health from Hunter College, another one of our sister CUNY schools. And then she went on and did something, she's a first. She is our first John Jay science graduate. She got her PhD from Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health. And again, our first science graduate with a PhD from Harvard, as they say. So before I turn over the virtual stage to Dr. Orta, I'd like to take a moment to, a solemn moment, but one that's also celebratory, to acknowledge the loss of someone who was very special to the PRISM community and John Jay generally. Dr. Donald Hoffman, who unfortunately passed away from COVID-19. But one of the things that I learned about Dr. Hoffman before he passed away, when we found out he was hospitalized, I remember, I call her Demi, but I know that's not what you call her. But the chair of our science department talked about how she sat with him and how he was so committed to learning how to do distance learning so he could continue to teach our students in this new environment. Unfortunately, he passed away in March, and his loss is deeply felt in this department. He worked at John Jay for over 20 years. So in honor of Dr. Hoffman, we are dedicating this symposium in his memory. And I know that he joins us from where he is in celebrating the achievements of our students today, those of you that he cared so much about and loved so much. So this is a celebration in his honor of the wonderful science that you guys are continuing. So please join me in welcoming to the virtual stage, Dr. Orta.
Let me cut in, Carol, because you keep trying to steal my introduction, Olivia.
I'm sorry, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that.
It's okay, but I've been waiting for at least 12 years to do this, so I'm not letting you steal this one moment. But Ed just texted me and said, we are good on time. And I know I had said to Yi, maybe just you would say hello from both, but since we have a minute, I was just wondering, since our provost is here, Yi, if I could put you on the spot for 30 seconds just to say a quick hello and welcome to our students.
He doesn't know he's still muted.
Yeah, are you there, Provost? I think maybe he's frozen up, so I'm going to continue. Yeah, I think he just got booted out. So let me continue. And let me say, as I said, I have been looking forward to this moment for at least a dozen years. In fact, I was all set to introduce Olivia last year when she had a tiny little minor conflict with the birth of her daughter just a couple of weeks before the symposium. And her daughter, Paz, didn't seem to want to let her mom travel to New York just a few weeks after she was born. So I've already told Paz that as payback 26, 27 or so years from now, she'll have to be our keynote speaker to make up for delaying her mom's talk. In many ways, Olivia's story is similar to many of yours. She was raised in the Bronx by a single mom, grandmother, and extended family, and came to John Jay attracted by its focus on justice. She majored in science and hit many of the same hurdles and roadblocks that you've all experienced. During her undergraduate years, she worked with myself and Dr. Peter Dizek on an undergraduate research project. Coincidentally, I was just talking with Pete on Friday, and he reminded me that Olivia was always pushing the envelope. She didn't come on board to an existing project that Peter and I had. She was interested in the new idea that was at that time really just an idea. Pete and I were just tossing around an idea of looking at the release of asbestos from a deep earth digging project that was going outside, literally just outside of the windows at John Jay. And it was in that project that I first saw Olivia's determination. She developed methods from scratch, monitored and collected samples, and learned how to analyze them all on her own with a little bit of guidance from Pete and myself. As Karol mentioned, Olivia graduated magna cum laude from John Jay in 2007 and knew that she wanted to go into public health and also knew that she wanted to go into Harvard. And so she put together an application, but Harvard didn't realize at that moment what a fantastic student she was, and she didn't get accepted. Not to be deterred, Olivia began assembling a series of experiences that would expand her resume and take her to where she is now. She got a job in an immunology lab at the Weill Cornell Medical Center. She enrolled in a master's program in public health at Hunter College, and she stopped by my office just to say hi, just a few months after I'd returned from a research trip to Brazil. Olivia was curious and offered to help, even offering to volunteer her time. I hired her as a research assistant, and over the course of the next year, we had frequent roaming conversations about data, Brazil, graduate school, public health, and life in general. Olivia brought creative and innovative ideas to the table. She somehow decoded hundreds of data points and made sense of my absolutely terrible handwriting to decode which data went with which conditions. And she was just a delight to work with, always showing up with a smile on her face and a conversation in her head. Despite all of the new options that were opening up for her, Olivia still had not lost her desire to go into public health and enroll at Harvard. And so she put in another application, and it was to the delight of both of us that Harvard recognized the mistake they had made some years earlier and admitted her. Olivia graduated from Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health in 2018 with a Doctorate of Science in Epidemiology, becoming John Jay's first science graduate to get a PhD from Harvard. And from there, she moved on to Boston University's School of Public Health, where she's currently a postdoctoral associate in epidemiology. Olivia and I have kept in touch throughout her journey, and I am absolutely delighted to introduce my colleague, friend, and our 2020 keynote speaker, Dr. Olivia Orta. Olivia will answer questions after her talk. If you have questions, please use the Q&A button below your screen to send them in, and Ed will pose these questions to Olivia at the end of her talk. And with that, Olivia?
Thank you so much, Dr. Karpi and President Mason, for that introduction and warm welcome. Dr. Karpi, you kind of just did my whole presentation for me. I mean, I can just go now. But again, my name is Olivia Orta, and I was where you are about 13 years ago. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the PRISM faculty and staff for inviting me and for making this all happen, especially during such extraordinary conditions. A special thank you to Dr. Karpi for being there for me over the years, both professionally and personally. You'll see later on in my presentation just how much this mentoring has shaped my research trajectory, and for that, I'm forever thankful. Another special thank you to each one of you for attending. I was able to see some of your presentations and was blown away by your work. I opened up by saying that I was where you are 13 years ago, but in truth, you're probably beyond where I was. So congratulations to you and your mentors. I'd also like to acknowledge the more behind the scenes people in our lives that help us do our research, and those are our family and friends. I saw that some of you mentioned them in your acknowledgement slide, which is really nice to see, and President Mason mentioned them as well. Those people help center us and restore us when this work feels impossibly draining, and it truly takes a village. Those sayings always felt so cliche when I was an undergrad, but I've come to realize that they've stuck around so long for two reasons. One, they're kind of true, and two, they're short and sweet and easy to remember. So in that vein, I've tried to title my talk something short and sweet, and I hope easy to remember. Share my screen now. So I hope you can see my screen. Yes. Okay. So I've titled my presentation, Do, Learn, Reflect, and Ideally Repeat. And it gets to the core of the message I'm hoping to convey to you all today. I will be referring to my notes often because I don't want to forget anything. So first, I'm going to start off with a few common questions. The first question that I get all the time is, what are you? I'm sorry, I need to start a timer just to keep me on track. Okay, so the first common question that I get is, what are you? As already mentioned, I have a doctorate degree in epidemiology, and I'm an epidemiologist at Boston University's School of Public Health. This picture is from my first day of work there and gives a good sense of my day-to-day work. So it consists of data analyses, data visualizations, manuscript writings, and tons of meetings. Prior to COVID-19, most people I met did not have a good sense of what epidemiology was. Since COVID-19, epidemiologists have been all over the news, giving updates using population data related to the number of cases, deaths, vaccination progress, etc. Nevertheless, I show here how the word quite literally means upon people I study. And the quote below it shows an important distinction between epidemiology and clinical medicine, where my primary unit of concern is the group, while a medical doctor's primary focus is generally the individual. The combination of this bird's eye perspective of an epidemiologist and the up-close perspective of medical doctors helps guide recommendations across the life course, from in utero to old age. The second question I hear often is, how has COVID-19 affected my work? So we are collecting self-reported COVID-19 data in a cohort study that I'm working on. However, we have stopped all in-clinic data collection to protect participants and staff. For data that has already been collected, data analysis, manuscript writing, and publications of those findings are ongoing as we all work virtually. Lastly, I'm often asked, how did I get here? Or how did I become an epidemiologist? I show this winding road because it was not a linear process. I did not know what an epidemiologist was as an undergraduate. But as you will see, at each research opportunity, these three questions help get me to the next step and ultimately to where I am today. First, what am I doing? That's the do part of my title, of course, and I use this word do very much in the active sense. How am I actively engaged in this research process? Am I signing up to be an undergraduate researcher for the summer, for a semester? What are my day-to-day tasks, etc.? Next, what am I learning? What specific skills am I acquiring? Am I learning how to analyze data? Am I practicing my public speaking, etc.? Third, and in my opinion, the most important, what do I like and want more of? I call this the reflection piece, and I think taking the time to really reflect on what aspects you want to gain more expertise in can really help ground you and keep you focused. So in this presentation, I will give a brief overview of my about 15-year research trajectory, and at each turn, shown here with these red marker points on the road, I will briefly explain what I did, what I learned, and what I liked and wanted more of. I pay particular focus to my undergraduate research experience to give you a good sense of what foundation I was working with. And what I hope you get out of this presentation is an understanding that the research skills you're acquiring at John Jay can help catapult you into a number of scientific disciplines, in my case, epidemiology. I also hope you see that this do, learn, reflect approach worked for me and may be helpful for you. Lastly, I will conclude with some tips for graduate school. I understand that many of you may not have worked in the North Hall. We sometimes refer to it as the old shoe factory, which only until recently did I understand was because it actually was an old shoe factory. The picture on your left in black and white is from, I'm sorry, I skipped a slide. Okay, starting as an undergraduate, I attended John Jay from 2003 to 2007 and received a Bachelor of Science degree in Forensic Science with a concentration in toxicology. While a PRISM student, I worked with Dr. Karpi on an environmental toxicology project that looked at the air surrounding the construction of the stage 2 of the 3rd New York City water tunnel. As you'll see in later slides, this construction was occurring right behind John Jay's North Hall building, and this construction had the potential of releasing microscopic fibers into the air that could result in lung damage at high levels. This is a picture of some of the equipment used during that project. You're looking at a small black canister with a small filter attached that I've stuck out the 4th floor window of the North Hall. The canister is connected to a tube that itself is attached to a vacuum which sucked air through the canister and past the filter so that we could capture and quantify the fibers. Again, I understand that many of you may not have worked in the North Hall, which we sometimes refer to as the shoe factory, because it was. So the picture on your left in black and white is from the 1970s, and I've added a red arrow to the location of the window from the previous slide. The colored picture on your right is more recent, but as you can see, looks very similar. I remember really being blown away when I saw the new John Jay building that you are all more familiar with. It's beautiful. But with that said, I have very fond memories of this North Hall. This map of NYC shows the vast networks of tunnels supplying New York City residents with water from upstate New York, and I've zoomed in on Manhattan for the sake of this presentation. The dark orange section that I've circled in red is the extension of the 3rd New York City tunnel that runs behind the North Hall. This diagram shows how that extension was designed to be deeper than the old water tunnel. So it's down here if you can see my mouse. And this is the old water tunnel. And the construction of this 3rd water tunnel required boring past thick layers of bedrock, which can result in the deposition of small mineral fibers into the air. What this diagram also shows is how much deeper these tunnels are in comparison to the subways, which are all the way up here. I took this picture from the roof of the North Hall, and you can see that there is a netting that I assumed was designed to capture some of that debris, but we were most concerned with the microscopic fibers that could make it past that netting. I also took this picture on a particularly busy day. In it, you see workers are being lowered into the hole, and in light of May Day, I'd like to acknowledge those workers. I think they're referred to as sandhogs. And I would also like to acknowledge the 24 individuals who have died in the construction of that 3rd water tunnel. This is that same photo of the filter setup that I would run overnight to collect air above the construction site. It is important to note that in addition to the John Jay students, faculty, and staff that were near the construction site, you can see that there's an elementary school in the background. I'm not sure if it's still there, and it drives home the point that this was an important monitoring project that have impacted our entire community. So this is a before and after of that air filter. The white filter to your left is the before, the black filter to your right shows the debris captured after about 12 hours of continuous air suctioning. This picture is from under the microscope, where you can see one of the fibers that I quantified in the crosshairs designed to quantify these fibers. So it's, I don't know if you can see, it's right here. This picture is from a different research team and shows what's happening at the cellular level. The arrows indicate where microscopic mineral fibers can lodge into lung tissue, causing lung damage. And again, speaks to the importance of this project. This is a figure that I made and presented as a PRISM student, showing time on the x-axis and the quantification of the fibers on the y-axis. The colors indicate the construction phase based on emails to the community, and the red stars indicate dates on which we received the blasting notifications to avoid the area. We hypothesized that these blastings may have increased the number of fibers in the surrounding air. As you can see, we observed some evidence of higher fiber counts post-blastings, and some evidence of increases in the number of fibers over the course of the construction. So what did I learn? I learned a lot. This was my first experience with data collection, analysis, and dissemination outside of the classroom setting. And I liked the idea that I was studying something relevant to my community's health. At the same time, I was pursuing a toxicology degree where we were learning about how toxins have an impact at the cellular level, and this made me interested in learning more about the cellular and molecular level in my graduate trainings. So in my last year at John Jay, I applied to 7 PhD programs in microbiology and immunology, and was rejected from all of them. What did I like about that experience? Nothing at the time. But one pro was that I had lots of time to reflect while working at the prep room in John Jay. After about a year into that position, I applied to a microbiology immunology lab as a research technician, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was interviewing with a woman who reviewed my PhD application and rejected it. She mentioned, when I was describing myself, she mentioned, just stop there, I know all about you, and I was a part of the committee that reviewed your application, and you just need more experience. So she offered me a job. And I say that to say, be persistent and be persistent. During these post-Bach years, I studied spliceosome proteins. Brief reminder, the spliceosome is a large and complex molecular machine that removes irrelevant coding regions from messenger RNA, which are then used to code all the important proteins in your body. On the upper left, I show a spliceosome. I show spliceosome proteins in pink performing their tasks on a pre-MNR strand. This is important because improper mRNA can result in improper protein translations and configurations that can lead to malfunction and adversely impact an organism's health. Beneath that spliceosome figure, I show an example of an in vivo analysis in yeast that I would often run, where we would compare this top row of the wild type yeast with no DNA modifications to that same strain with very specific DNA alterations to these very specific spliceosome proteins. And for example, you can see here that in this third row, that DNA alteration was particularly lethal and thus important to spliceosome functioning. Just finding my way back to my notes. I really liked this molecular perspective to health and how one change in DNA could have severe consequences. However, I was becoming extremely interested in other causes of health, particularly macro and man-made factors such as pollution and access to health. During my post-Bach years, as Dr. Karpi mentioned, we stayed in touch. He had just come back from Brazil, where he was studying the effects of deforestation on mercury emission. And admittingly, this diagram is very busy, but what I'd like you to take away from this is that there are a number of ways that mercury can be released into the air, and that deforestation, circled here as anthropogenic is one of them. And once in the air, this mercury can be deposited into oceans and seas, biomagnified in fish, and then consumed by humans, which at high levels can be toxic. The picture on the upper left is from a recent New York Times article and shows an aerial perspective of a deforested section of the Brazilian Amazon. And the picture on the lower left is of Dr. Karpi in front of a burning section of the Amazon during his visit. I asked if I could use this picture and you said yes, just please remember that. I learned a lot about data collection, and it was my first experience with the manuscript process. I really enjoyed this macro level perspective of health exposures and gravitated to it as my major research interest. I also appreciated the perspective it gave me for working closely with a mentor on a research project. That work resulted in my first publication, which I refer you to for details if interested. Also, during my postdoc years, I watched a lot of documentaries, yes, for fun. One of them stuck with me and told the stories of women with obstetric fistulas. Obstetric fistulas are injuries to the vaginal cavity resulting from, in many cases, prolonged birth. This damage can result in uncontrollable leakage of urine and or feces from the vaginal cavity and can result in women being outcasts in their society, which has a number of impacts on the quality of life and health of mother, child, and potentially the entire family unit. And what was the main cause of this condition in the documentary? Lack of access to a healthcare setting. In summary, my interests were becoming more geared toward these macro level determinants of health that in my mind were largely upstream of the cellular and molecular happenings, both of which are very important to our scientific understanding of health. During my years in the molecular laboratory and while working at Dr. Karpi, I applied for a degree in epidemiology and biostatistics at the CUNY School of Public Health at Hunter College. I studied factors related to reproductive physiology, and I learned that I loved epidemiology and picked up a lot of tangible skills related to data analysis, data collection, and writing. I took this picture to your left during my capstone where I traveled to Uganda to collect data related to obstetric practices in rural regions. This woman was heavily pregnant and showed signs of preeclampsia, characterized by elevated blood pressure during pregnancy. I remember the mood being very somber as we silently observed her appointment. We knew that the nearest hospital that could treat her was many miles away, and we didn't know if she would be able to make it there. During my master's degree, I realized that what I really liked about epidemiology was its incorporation of the macro and microscopic factors related to health. I was motivated to apply for a PhD once again, this time in epidemiology with a focus on reproductive health. So I applied to another 7 schools, which obviously worked out better for me this time. I learned that I had a better sense of my research interests and that I had relevant experience. In essence, I learned that I was a better fit. And I also had a better sense of my priorities. For example, I wanted to stay close to New York City for family, and I knew I wanted a school that had a strong focus on reproductive and obstetric health. I went to Harvard for a doctorate degree in epidemiology, and I minored in biostatistics and continued to study factors that impact reproductive physiology and health. I learned a lot about theories, study design, and analyses. I worked a lot on my writing and was lucky to have the opportunity to teach undergraduate and graduate students. I also learned a lot about the politics of academia, which I have to admit I was largely unprepared for. I liked that my dissertation incorporated both the social and cellular factors that impacted health, and I knew that I was most passionate about modifiable social determinants of health. Briefly, physiological and physical stressors, such as chronic economic distress, abuse, or maybe in our case, a pandemic, are literally embodied and manifested on the cellular level. This diagram shows the cascade that occurs when stress is perceived by the brain, specifically the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA axis for short. 2 measurable outputs of this response are cortisol and DHEA. For one part of my dissertation, I measured these biomarkers in saliva and asked participants a number of questions related to their exposure to violence and distress. This is an example of the instructions that were sent to individuals, asking them to spit into vials multiple times a day at designated times of the day. And we then asked them to ship them to us on ice in the mail. This is one of many graphs that I presented at my dissertation and in the publication. And it shows the diurnal trend of one of these biomarkers with time of day on the x-axis and the concentration on the y-axis. The blue line is the daily trend in this stress hormone among individuals who were characterized as having experienced the least amount of violence in childhood. And the red line, the trend for those who reported the highest level of violence in childhood. Two important takeaways are that, one, those with the greatest amount of abuse, shown in red, had higher levels of the stress hormone at most times of the day. And two, this even included the evening when we would expect your body to be winding down. And we would expect the lowest levels of the stress hormone. This is a screenshot of the published chapters from my dissertation, some of which are available on Google Scholar if interested in details. The one on the lower right is the one I just described. And the other two looked at cortisol levels in the hair of pregnant women, which I was happy to see referred to in Alejandro's presentation earlier in the day. The use of hair during pregnancy is super cool. So it was important for me in my postdoc where I am now to incorporate the social determinants of health and focus on high-risk populations. Currently, as a postdoc, my main research project looks at endocrine disrupting chemical pollutants. As I hope I have previously described, hormones are important and can reflect your lived experience. These pollutants mimic your hormones and can adversely affect a number of health outcomes, including reproductive and neurological outcomes. In the US, these chemicals are highly prevalent in Black women. However, their impacts are unclear. My analyses are still in progress, although we have published on some of the factors associated with levels of these chemicals in the women's blood. So predictors of pollutants in Black women's blood. Unfortunately, the biggest factor associated with EDC levels in their blood are related to socioeconomic status. And it is yet another important example of how we embody our lived experience. So far, this work has inspired me to get involved with policy reforms and community organizations that have been highlighting the pollution of their community for years, as shown here in this demonstration photo. Ultimately, I hope that my next curve in my research trajectory involves opportunities that center an environmental justice and equity framework. So I turn the table towards you. What are you currently doing? What are you currently learning? And what do you like and want more of? On the flip side, what do you dislike and want less of? Less positive, but still helpful. I often, when I ask people what they like about something, it's harder for them to describe. But if you ask what they dislike, they're happy to share. So if you need to start there, start somewhere. Importantly, who do you want to learn more with? Mentors and research teams, as you probably already know, are some of the most important factors when deciding on a graduate school. Be proactive, reach out, and ask questions before applying. Now, a tip about reaching out. This is an example of an email I commonly see. Dear Dr. Blank, my name is this. I'm interested in epidemiology and I'm considering applying to a graduate degree. Do you have time to talk in the coming weeks? This is not necessarily a bad email, but its lack of specificity makes it easy to forget. So my recommendation is to stand out, be brief but specific. Briefly mention why you're reaching out. What about my experience or work do you think can help you? On a related note, you won't know what you need help with if you didn't take the time to reflect. Oh, and then also importantly, provide some times to talk. That's useful. If you still haven't heard back in 2 weeks, I often give the advice to follow up. Just send a brief follow-up. I do think that most people want to help, even those that are busy. They may have honestly just forgotten. And after speaking with them or receiving answers to your questions, do send a thank you. And now a brief note on mentoring. This is potentially most important post-acceptance. You'll likely be assigned one mentor. However, the best advice I ever received was to invest in a mentorship team. This does not need to be formal like your dissertation committee, and it can be a group of individuals that have specific skills and experiences that can help you with your specific needs. I added a star here because I've noticed that this is the most difficult for those who don't know what those needs are. So again, reflect. It is unlikely that one person will have all of the qualities you're hoping to work on while in graduate school. So for example, in addition to your main mentor, you may want to reach out to a faculty member who is an expert in a specific method you'd like to gain additional experience with. So for me, that was and continues to be longitudinal analyses with multiple data points. Junior faculty can be particularly helpful since they're closer to your experience and sometimes have more time compared to senior faculty. My second bit of advice in this scenario is that when meeting with your main mentor, don't just come with questions, but also potential solutions. This helps show that you're taking a leadership role. My third advice, and as already mentioned by President Mason, is to stay connected to past mentors. Dr. Karpi has been an important mentor at multiple steps in the past 15 years, and sometimes I just send an email that says, "Hi, this is what I'm up to, how are you?" I think former mentors like to hear how you're doing, and I've reached out to a number of mentors over the years. There are many other tips that I found myself adding to this slide, but for the sake of time, I will stop here. If you have any questions that we don't get to today, please feel free to reach out to me using this email address, and I'll do my best to answer in a timely manner. Thank you for listening, and a huge thank you again to Dr. Karpi and Pete Dysek and all of my mentors along the way. And a very special thank you to my husband and daughter whose love and laughter give me the strength to do this work.
Thank you very much, Dr. Orta. I'm Dr. Edgardo Senaria Valentin, and when I'm not hosting massive webinars like this one, I'm the Associate Director of the Program for Research Initiatives in Science and Math. I will be moderating the Q&A session, but before we start, I would like to acknowledge a few people in the audience. We have a few PRISM alumni that came to see you. We have Yesenia Lopez, Sean Williams, Ronald Rodriguez, Sabrina de los Santos, and OJ Stewart. Thank you guys for coming. So please remember that if you have questions, you can use the Q&A button in the bottom. Right now we have a question from one of our students, Ms. Shian Rosario. What pushed you to apply to Harvard again after they had rejected you the first time? And what made you to not give up?
Good questions. So one, what pushed? I like that you said pushed, because I think it really was a push. I think I have a clear memory of walking into Dr. Karpi's office and saying, I think I'm going to apply for PhD schools again. And he said, you should try for Harvard again. And I said, what are you, nuts? I didn't want to waste my admission money, and I just didn't want to give them another rejection letter. So I think that, leaning on trusted mentors and putting your plans out there, sometimes you get these helpful pushes, and that I feel like that was a big push, literally. So what kept me from not giving up? I think I like the word persistent, because I think I'm more stubborn than persistent. And I think stubborn plus curious, if checks 2 important boxes for research. And it seriously is about fit. Like, what is your fit? And I think that's the reflection piece I keep trying to get people to really reckon with, because just because you get no from one place, it's like you do have a fit out there. What is it? Apply there.
Excellent. Thank you very much. The next question that I have is actually from, and it's one of the questions that I always ask alumni when they come back, and is, if you could travel in time and give yourself a piece of advice, something that you have learned through the period one, but you only get one, what would that advice be?
Oh, I wish you sent that to me in advance. One piece of advice.
I've asked you this question before when you came back to talk to our students once.
Oh, I would not remember what I said. One piece of advice. I don't know.
Okay, well, you think about,
I'm going to think about it.
We do have other questions from the audience. We have a question. If you could go back in time and change anything in your journey, what would that be?
Oh, another good question. If I could change any one of those things, I think that I wish I stayed in contact with more peers. I wish I could change that. I think that as much as, of course, our mentors have so much to teach us, your peers have so much that they can teach you as well, and that you can share with each other. And I think, you know, as Alejandro mentioned in his closing, is you're all going to be like seeds in the wind and go into all these great different places and professions, and keep in touch. Keep in touch.
Okay. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, career-wise?
Ooh, working at John Jay? No, I won't put that out there, but that'd be nice. I do, in 5 years, that's a really good question. I see myself in academia in some form or fashion, but I would really like to reach out and start building some sort of collaborations with community organizations, and providing some technical help. I really want to get down to like a grassroots, I want to bring my research to like grassroots mobilizations, and that understandably takes a lot of time to build trust there. So I think that's where I see the next 5 years of my profession going.
Okay. We do have some more questions from the audience. What do you think, that as an epidemiologist, the US and the rest of the world will improve in healthcare?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I have colleagues who study healthcare in the US context, which, as you all know, is very complicated and beyond my understanding of it. And I can only say that there are really passionate people working on these projects, and I have faith and hope that we're getting there. But I think it's going to be the collaboration of epidemiologists and a lot of other disciplines. So I'm sorry if that didn't really answer your question.
Go for it, President Mason.
I couldn't figure out how to type a question in the Q&A box. So thank you for letting me know. So I was fascinated by the serendipity of you running into a woman who was on one of your graduate school application committees, who you later worked with in her lab. I'm wondering how that experience has impacted how you move through the world now and how you interact with students who are thinking about graduate school.
Yeah, as you know, you're hitting the nail on the head with two aspects of that interaction. There was me deliberately applying, but then there was also this factor I could not control of the universe, you know, bringing me to this woman's lab, which I'm grateful for. How does that impact my how I'm navigating through the world, specifically with respect to research and interacting with students? I do think that it brings a level of compassion and openness that I try to bring to my interactions, where sometimes people just need another chance, and you have to, you could be that person, you could be opening doors to other people, and I think it just humbles you. And we all need to be a lot more humble. And even science, I think when we think of the scientific process, it feels very controlled, like taking this mouse and doing this thing to it. And I think also working with human beings in epidemiological setting, there's a lot you can't control, and just being like humble and grounded and finding your peace, whatever that is. I hope that was a clear-ish answer.
We have another question from the audience. During the presentation, you said that it's important to show a leadership role when meeting new people or mentors. What advice would you give students so that the students that need to work on becoming leaders?
Yeah, so that makes me think of two things. So one, there's something deep inside of each and every one of you that you probably do better than others on average, and lean into that and really embrace that. And that's what makes you special and unique. And that's part of your contribution to the field. And I think that when you really lean in and find those aspects that make you special, and like for me, like I said, I'm stubborn, you know, and that's good and bad. And I'm also very critical, which is good and bad. So leaning into these things that make you special and unique really, I think, brings out the leadership in you, because I don't know. I think that for me, if I think back on my interactions with Dr. Karpi as a postdoc student, looking at his notebooks and, you know, trying to make sense of his data, I remember telling him, I categorized your light categories in these ways. And I remember he was like, what, why, how? Like prove to me why you made that decision. And in retrospect, that was me taking a leadership role, and I didn't know. But I think that I was just so curious and fascinated with the data that I made some decisions to keep moving. And I think that my curiosity, stubbornness, persistence helped me lean into that leadership. Combined with being involved in a project with someone who I trusted and wanted to learn with, and on a project that I was interested in. So I think you really have to lean into what makes you special, find a mentor in a project that you find interesting, and I think the leadership comes from there.
Okay. I have an interesting question also from the audience here, who's asking me if you have ever had imposter syndrome, and if you have had it, do you have any advice to our students on how to get over it? For those of you who don't know, imposter syndrome is a very common occurrence among particularly scientists and professionals coming from underrepresented backgrounds, where you feel like an imposter, like, oh my God, they're going to realize I shouldn't be here at some point. So have you ever felt like that? And what can you tell our students to, you know, get over the hump?
Yes, I have. I think it's absolutely natural to feel those feelings. I think being a first-gen bachelor, master, PhD at an elite, predominantly white institution, you can't help but have all these questions in your mind. But I think, talk about those things that can be good and bad in your life. I think my arrogance kind of helped me there, because I was like, wait, I'm coming with a very special and different perspective, and I'm going to lean into that. Yes, I belong to be here, and so do all my peers who I worked with throughout this to get here, actually. And see, that's another thing. Lean into that anger and that fear that's driving some of that, because I sound angry, because I am. But like, you deserve to be there. You're bringing a very unique perspective. You're needed in these spaces. So what's my advice? I don't know what my advice is, but it's so common. Find your people, whatever that means, right? If you like knitting, find your knitting people, vent while knitting, and then go back into those spaces and be like, I deserve to be here, bam, take me as I am. sorry, I should probably have filtered this advice through Ed and Anthony before you gave me the mic.
Not at all.
Hi, this is Yi. Again, like Carol, I don't know how to use the question tab. So my question is, you talk about your early experience with rejections, and I'm sure as a scientist, you probably have seen and met with many times occasions result that's not what you expected, namely failures. So can you speak a little bit more that how important that one learns from those failures and not give up?
Yeah, that's a great question. The rejection piece and the failure piece is so common. It makes me remember why the word is research, to search again and again, and probably because things are going wrong and you have to try other avenues. Yeah, those rejections early on stung. And like I said, I needed to take a beat, take a step and think about what that meant. And I still get rejections. My papers get rejected. I still deal with this. And again, when you talk with your peers, you realize how common it is. And I think that it's unhealthy to ruminate in those failures. And I think there's a quote I was going to add to this. At one point it said, perfection is the enemy of progress. Just keep moving. Like, we all fail. And another quote I wanted to add was, mistakes are proof you're trying. Obviously, like quotes. So rejection and failure is so common. Welcome to the club.
Okay, we have one last from the audience. And then after a little bit, we're gonna come back. We're gonna stay here for a while. So if you have more questions, and I have quite a few here on the screen, we're gonna continue. But particularly in this part of the session, the last one is from someone you might know, Professor Xuyan Sheng. And her question is, you have a forensic science degree with a concentration in toxicology. What did our program prepare you for pursuing your career, or how did it impact on making the decision for pursuing your career?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know if I've stressed this enough. I adore my training at John Jay. And when people meet me and want to talk about Harvard, I actually want to talk about John Jay. It provided an outstanding foundation from which I was able to build upon. And I think that undergraduate degree in forensic science is hard. I still remember, it's so hard. And it's helped me, even though I haven't pursued forensic science as a profession. The level of biochemistry I had to understand, and like using the instruments. I work with data from people who are doing these things, and it helps me communicate with them actually to some level about aspects like, oh, did you run a blank? What's the QC process? It's helped me understand where my data comes from. It's huge. It's helped me communicate beyond disciplines. It's given me this foundation of justice, like this justice lens. You see that it develops in my trajectory, but the foundation at John Jay was really there. And the interaction with faculty, I think that's some of the nicest faculty I've ever learned under. No shade on all the other great institutions I've learned at. But I hope that gets to that question, and John Jay rocks.
Okay, so we still have a few questions, but we have to do a little something now because we're approaching 7 p.m. So Dr. Karpi, why don't you take it away?
Sure, thank you. That was really fantastic. I noticed that our provost is back online. I tried to put you on the spot, before, and see if you want to say a quick word of welcome and congratulations to everyone joining. So maybe I could put you on the spot now.
Sure. And well, to everyone, especially to our students, you are being experienced in this unprecedented hardship and the transition. You have to go through very quick process to online. That surely has a huge impact on your research. I was able to log into on 2 of the toxicology and the forensic science poster sessions. I was really inspired and encouraged, despite all these difficulties, our students, the quality of your research, the care you had carried, that you actually, when collecting, analyzing data. But after all, my really sincere congratulations to our faculty, if there's any out there, I saw earlier, you know, and program directors, Ed and Anthony, really for your care and leadership to really make this a remote presentation wonderful. And I really so appreciate the result. And if there's a family member, I don't know if there's any, and my thanks to you for your continued support for the education that your siblings, your children are having at Jiangjie. And the president and I and Dean Anthony, Ed, our ultimate, you know, care is really the safety and security of our student and the education outcome. So we're sure you will try our best. And we are seeing today some of the best among all the best. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Provost. I also want to acknowledge, as Ed did earlier, I saw that our AVC of Research, Tamara Schneider, joined, and I just wanted to thank her for stopping in and seeing what our students are doing. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you, Olivia. Those were really stunning talks. I am so impressed with all of you guys, with our mentors, with our staff. I don't think we can unmute you all to give a big round of applause, but please join me in quietly thanking everyone who participated. That was fantastic. That was a great event. I really enjoyed it. Thank you to Ed and the PRISM crew for pulling this together. For our students, if Ed doesn't respond in the next 48 or 72 hours, don't worry. I think he's just passed out on his couch, sleeping this off. So just give him a couple of days. We hope you all have a wonderful end of your semester. Please keep in touch with your mentors. Please keep in touch with Edgardo. Some of our mentors will be working to hold virtual lab sessions during the summer until the campus opens back up. And for others, Ed and staff will be organizing a virtual summer research experience for you. So I hope you have a wonderful evening. Stay well, stay healthy, and let me turn it back to Edgardo for one final word.
Okay, so we will get back to the Q&A. I hope that Olivia stays with us. But I just want to get the part where we thank people for money. So before I conclude, I want to thank our students, their faculty mentors, and their loved ones for supporting them. I would also like to thank our amazing staff, guys. Without you, I would be even, my blood pressure would be even higher. The 2020 PRISM Undergraduate Research e-Symposium is being sponsored by the Association for Program Administrators of C-STEP and STEP. Thank you to them for providing some of the technology being used today. Funding for PRISM and student research mentoring is provided by various state and federal sources, which we gratefully acknowledge. The New York State Education Department Collegiate Science and Technology Entry Program Grant, a U.S. Department of Education Developing Hispanic Serving Institutions Program, Title V grant for collaborative initiatives, the National Science Foundation's Scholarships in Science, Technology, Engineering, Mathematics Program, an award from the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York's Graduate Research and Technology Initiative, and a special allocation award from John Jay's Office for the Advancement of Research. PRISM is also supported by the philanthropic support of generous individuals. 100% of money donated to PRISM goes directly to the students to help pay for student travel. If you'd like to support us, you can find the link to support PRISM at the bottom of our website. With that, I'll say thank you very much. And while we still have you, Olivia, we would like to continue with a couple of the questions that we have, if you don't mind. So
I don't mind, and I know what I would tell my undergraduate self.
Ooh, yeah.
Don't take yourself too seriously. Relax.
Definitely. I have learned that. That's why my hair is this particular color right now. So you mentioned that you like to go into academia after you finish your postdoc. But our audience would like to know what other options are there for epidemiologists career-wise? What else can they do beyond going into academia?
Oh, that's a great question. So I have some experience in a Department of Public Health, which is a very different skill set. I'm in awe of the level of collaboration governing a public health institution. So besides academia, you could go into government. So you can work at a public health department, state public health department, city, right? There's the New York City Department of Public Health. There's the New York State Department of Public Health. Also, you can go into industry. You could work at a pharmaceutical company, probably get paid a lot of money. You could also, I think there are other industry options. I haven't looked into those. That's not my primary interest, but I have peers who have gone in that direction. All of them have their pros and cons. Choose your fit, and you don't know your fit if you don't reflect.
So we have a couple of our students that are planning and are going to be starting graduate school and post-bac experiences after this year. And one of them wants to know how different was your post-bac experience and your PhD? Were they similar in terms of the techniques and the responsibilities that you had? And also, what can you do to develop a sense of community when you are in grad school?
Oh, that's a good one. Could you remind me the second one? Because I'm going to forget it. So the first
one was, was there a main similarity or difference between your post-bac experience and the experience that you had while you were in grad school in terms of responsibilities, in terms of what you were learning, and also in terms of the growth?
Yeah. So for that first question, I think the biggest difference between my post-bac experience and grad school were two things: structure and funding. So for the post-bac experience, as you can see, it was a hodgepodge of me putting it together. I was working. I was working and getting paid a salary with Cornell. I was working with Dr. Karpi, and I was lab teching at John Jay too. So it was really me balancing those things myself. And funding was what I was getting paid, right? With grad school, you are funded to sit down and study and perfect what you're there for. So it gives more structure. I remember with grad school, for my experience, the first 2 years were straight classes and lots of homework. And then you take your qualifying exams. And I remember wanting to have a huge party after that, because that's the last test of your academic life. It's great. And then 3 years of straight research, which ideally you're being funded to do. So I think they're very different with respect to structure and funding. Oh, and the second question of building community.
Yes, how do you build community when you're in grad school?
Yeah, so I think I capitalize on that first month there, because I think that's when the grad school is like, we're so happy to have you. Here's free pens. Here's a cozy. Oh, we love you. Get to know each other. Here's a baseball game. Here's some tickets. Capitalize on finding and making friends then, because after a few months, they're like, okay, get back to work. And so I think that it's a fertile ground for friendship in the beginning, that I wish that I did make friends. And but then as it gets more and more stressful, of course, pruning happens, and it's work. But misery loves company, and you'll find someone to vent with while in grad school. And my biggest advice there is to keep in touch with people who knew you before grad school, because you need people to keep you grounded, to be like, chill out, relax. My best friend I met at John Jay, the first day at John Jay, she remains my best friend. And she was a great year to be so removed from the graduate school experience, to be like, I'm here to listen to what you're going through. And I also want to talk about Dancing with the Stars. Are you done yet? So, I mean, it really kept me grounded.
Okay, so our students are going to be starting their postgraduate lives in a very weird environment right now. And one of them wants to know if there's any particular advice that you would give to undergraduate students finishing this year, next year, before they enter graduate schools or their professional careers.
Yeah, it's extraordinary times. I would say reach out to the schools. So did you mention this is in particular with respect to applying to schools and starting schools, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that just like John Jay has a PRISM program with such devoted faculty and staff, and reach out to your school's subdivisions. You know, like there's sometimes a diversity office, sometimes there's a research office. I think I've heard some of the behind the scenes conversations where they're really worried about you all and want to make sure you feel welcomed and want to make sure that you have the resources that you need. And so a quick Google of the school you're going to, these websites, there should be a contact email, reach out to them, let them know what extra resources you might need during these times, whether that's, I don't know. I feel like it doesn't hurt asking if you're having some technical difficulties, if you need funding for a laptop. I would say, like, mention the barriers that you feel like you're experiencing at the moment, and you'd be surprised how much people are willing to help. I hope that answered the question.
I think so, yeah. So I have one last question. Do you have a personal mantra that you use to keep yourself on track with your goals?
Goals. Yeah, I don't.
I actually think you said it is do, repeat, and reflect.
Do, learn, reflect, repeat. I don't know. I think I'm really inspired, to be honest, by big names outside of my discipline. I've been reading a lot of, to be honest, I've been listening to a lot of interviews from James Baldwin recently and Toni Morrison, and they drop those truth bombs of like, you know, we've been through a lot of pain and hurt and we got it in us and we can do it and so can you. And I think that there's a lot of inspirational stuff out there that if you have the time to plug into during these extraordinary times, do it. I don't think I have one in particular. I'd say right now, like I said, I've been listening to a lot of James Baldwin interviews and Toni Morrison. So,
well, thank you very much, Dr. Orta. It's been a pleasure. I hope that I get to see you soon so I can give you a big hug. Thank you very much for adapting so quickly to this format. And with that said, I would like to thank everyone for attending, for sticking with us, and for your questions, and particularly for our students for the amazing job that you guys did in your presentations. That said, good night. And I am really hoping that I'll get to see all of you soon. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you, everyone.
Ed.